So today I'm going to show you a quick video on how to sew your pointe shoes. Once you have everything you need, the first thing you want to do is cut your ribbon into 4 equal pieces and then just gently burn the ends of them with a lighter. This will keep them from fraying as you sew. So once you have that done, the first thing I like to do is to just gently fold down the back of the pointe shoe. This will kind of give you an even way of knowing where to sew your ribbons, and it'll also help give you an angle at which to sew them. So once you kind of have it nicely folded and it looks even on both sides, I like to just take a pencil and gently mark on this inside canvas where to sew. So that, as you can see here, you have some gentle pencil lines to use. So once you've marked your pointe shoe, now you can take your ribbon and gently line it up against this line. Just like so. Then you can actually get to sewing. I should note here though that there's 2 pieces of material that a pointe shoe is kind of made of in terms of this outside. So you've got this beautiful satin, and then you've got this canvas on the inside. And if you actually gently pull, you can pull these 2 pieces apart. You want to try and sew just through this canvas piece so you don't see the like sewing square on the outside here, and it'll keep the outside of your pointe shoe looking much prettier. So with that in mind, line your piece of ribbon gently along this line. You do want to make sure that it's a safe distance from this seam, just because this is actually quite thick and hard to sew through. So with that, sometimes I like to fold the back of the pointe shoe over. Sorry, just like that. I find sometimes it's easier to sew, and it keeps me from getting caught on the back of the shoe. So now that you've got everything lined up, you can actually start sewing. Now there's 2 different ways you can kind of sew this. You can either do what I would call a loop, where you go in from the canvas and up through the ribbon, and then you just keep doing that. So instead of going back through, and it kind of creates a loop. The other way you can do it, if you prefer, is to do kind of more of a back and forth sewing. So now that you've come back up through the top, now you go back through the bottom, through the canvas, and then through the canvas, back through the ribbon. Trying to keep the spaces obviously as even as you can. So I have a finished one here. So when you're done, it'll look like this. So I've done it in a square. I prefer the looping sewing. I find it easier and less time consuming. However, I do the back and forth kind of at the top here. You want to make sure too that you don't sew through this outer elastic. If you do that, you won't be able to pull the drawstrings of your pointe shoes, and that won't be fun. So I try not to sew through this outside part. So when you've got both done, it'll kind of look like this. Once you're done sewing on your ribbons, you can get going on your elastics. In today's video, I'm actually going to show you how to do it both ways, both crisscross and once around the ankle. So once you've got your ribbons sewn on your pointe shoes, now I'm going to show you how to do your elastics. So for this, you are going to need to put your pointe shoes on. I like to measure it with my leg at about a 90-degree angle. I just find that that helps kind of keep everything as perfect as possible. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the end of the elastic and measuring it just where this lovely back seam is here, you're just going to kind of gently tuck it in, just like so. And then you're going to wrap it right around your ankle to the other side. Now you do want to measure this so it's nice and snug. It is meant to hold on the back of your pointe shoe. So you don't obviously want it too tight that it's going to be sore, and you don't want it so loose that it's not doing its job. So once you've measured it, you can give it a quick trim, and you'll get the right length that you need. Once you've measured everything out, you can get to sewing. So I like to sew mine on the either side of this back seam. So on the inside, I like to make a little triangle. So I like to put one edge of the seam right on this stitching, and then the other end up here. And then I'll loop it to match like that on the other side. Once you've sewn one piece down, I do recommend putting your shoe back on and double checking that you've gotten the length right before you sew, because you might need to do a little bit more trimming depending on how much extra you gave yourself to do a bit of sewing. To just kind of show what it looks like when it's done, as you can see, I kind of did 2 separate lines of sewing. I like to do this just because you tend to tug on this kai quite a bit, so I like to have a little bit of extra stitching to hold it on. But this is what your finished product should look like if you're just doing the loop around your ankle. The other way you can sew your elastics on your pointe shoes is in a crisscross fashion. So you're going to start out the same way. Just going to slip on your pointe shoe. And then you're going to use the same area we did for the loop. You're just going to tuck it into the back, right beside the seam. But instead of looping it around to the other side, you're going to loop it just in front of this nice seam here. And once you've kind of pulled it nice and tight, you'll give that a quick trim. Generally use the same size piece for both feet. However, I like to double check. It's kind of like a second chance to make sure you measured correctly. I'm going to give that a nice trim. Now you have your even pieces. Now, I would like to point out that if you're going to do a crisscross method, you do need to buy 2 sets of elastics, just because you are only going to get enough for 1 shoe out of each set. Now, to sew these guys onto the pointe shoe, instead of doing a triangle like you do for the loop, I like to line mine up straight, right against this back seam, and then loop to this seam here and go straight up and down. So it looks kind of like this unsewn. And then you'll use the exact same sewing method that you did for your ribbons. I would recommend sewing the back on first, then double checking once again that you've gotten the measurement right by putting your foot in, and then giving it a sew. So here's an example of what the finished product of a crisscross elastic sewn pointe shoe will look like. As you can see, there's a kind of a double line stitching at the back there to hold it on, and then similar to the elastics, a little bit of a square stitching there. Thank you for watching our video on how to sew your pointe shoes. Happy sewing, everyone!